We've got about 15 minutes. I've
Okay.
got one question online that I want to finish with, but I also want to give you guys a chance. Yeah.
So this growing up and waking up
Yeah.
that you're integrating, I just want to mention that you also separated them. This separating growing up and waking up is probably, well, I'll take the probably out. It's the most important idea since the theory of evolution. This Wilber-Combs lattice, which is really, there's two processes going on, waking up and growing up, which leads us to the cleaning up question.
Yeah.
You so clearly articulate what shadows are.
Yeah.
And it just is the clearest articulation I've ever heard.
Thank you.
So I'm wondering if you could share with the audience what shadows are and why shadow work is crucial.
The nature of evolution, going all the way back to the Big Bang, is transcend and include, transcend and include, transcend and include. And what that means is that you have an atom, then the next stage of development transcends the atom, that's the molecule. Transcends means it goes beyond. It's more complex than the atom. It includes a lot of atoms, but it is a transcendence of the atom. It goes beyond it. But it also includes it. It actually enwraps it and enfolds it. In the same way, when molecules move into cells, the cells transcend molecules. They bring them together, act on them, but they're transcending them. They're going beyond them. They have something greater in them than the molecules have in themselves. But they also include them. They actually enwrap them, enfold them, and bring them with them. Now, this goes on all the way up into humans. And humans' stages of growth also transcend and include, transcend and include, transcend and include. Now, something can go wrong with either one. So if transcend is too overdone, too aggressive, too intense, then you actually repress. You move beyond and push away the lower. You don't take care of it. You don't include it. You don't enwrap it. And so that pushing away sets up one type of shadow because it's pushing away some component of the psyche. And if something goes wrong in the inclusion and there is not an accurate and smooth inclusion, then it gets split off, and you can get addictions to that. It's unconscious. You haven't let go of it, and so you remain addicted to it. You remain stuck to it. So that's another type of shadow. So you have, simply because of the nature of evolution, you have these two types of shadows, which is either going too far and splitting off, or not going far enough and therefore remaining stuck. And those are addictions and allergies. And so that means that as your interior growth is occurring, certain components are getting either split off or addicted, stuck to. Allergies are developing or addictions are developing. And that does mean the shadow's not fitting in to the ongoing march of consciousness. It's getting split off as a subpersonality. And that subpersonality maintains the needs and the wants and the actual age of when it was split off or repressed or pushed out as a subpersonality. And when that happens, it takes a bit of consciousness with it as it moves out of the ongoing growth stream. And so it remains in the basement with all of these desires and needs that it had when it was split off. If it was split off at 5, it remains 5 years old. If it's split off at 7, it remains 7 years old. And it has 7-year-old desires. This can happen literally all the way up. It can happen in the 2nd tier and into 3rd tier. And so what's so important is that when those subpersonalities are split off and they take their bit of consciousness with them, then the amount of consciousness you have, active and effective, becomes less and less and less. And so if you start off with 100 pesos of consciousness, and at each major fulcrum, you lose 5 in one, and then you lose 10, so you've lost 15, then you lose maybe another 10, you've lost 25, now you only have 75 pesos left, and then you move on up and you lose another 10, now you've only got 65 left. And so as you're starting to hit 2nd tier and you've only got 65 pesos left, and you've got 35 that are subconscious, maybe it takes 80 pesos of force to get into 2nd tier. You don't have it. So your growth comes to an arrested development, and it just stalls. And if you don't get those subpersonalities back into consciousness and integrated into consciousness so that they can move forward, then you're going to be not just stuck at a lower level, but you're going to be kept out of the higher levels of development. And the great traditions don't cover those very well. So that's another item that you need to bring into a meditative practice. They cover states fairly well. They get the states of development down fairly well. They don't get the structures, and they don't get shadow. And so structures and shadow are two things that have to be introduced into a meditation system to get the whole really functioning fully, and to get you growing into the higher potentials, higher capacities, higher spiritual possibilities that you have. And so that's a general look at shadow. It's very, very important issue.
And if I understand you correctly, that consciousness that you're measuring in pesos, you call authenticity.
Yeah, another
So
term, sure.
The more that's getting spun off, the less pesos you have, because you've got all these disowned selves and
Yes.
these addicted selves.
Yes.
Then the less authentic one is.
Yeah, absolutely. And because the less of consciousness as presence you have. And so you really start to assume sort of shaky, false self systems that don't ring true, aren't authentic, don't have much integrity. Not a good way to go through life.
Yeah.
And thank you.
Yes.
This clarity that you bring to that is become a foundational practice in
Oh,
Integral
great.
Zen.
Great.
We call it illuminating Zen.
Wonderful.
Nice.
Wonderful.
Nice.